YCS Japan has come and gone, and this has been one of the more interesting events that I think that we've seen out here for a top cut. Don't beg the 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. Your pie chart here is very impressive. We have Mathmech, Mikanko, Super Heavy, Purely, Rescue Ace, Dragon Link, Sword Soul, and Rika. Is there anything from this that you don't really recognize? Because I feel like Mikanko is a little bit of a surprise, but when you look through this minus 2 elements, Rescue Ace showcasing here that it can do its thing. Purely has been one of the top contending decks out of the OCG for quite some time, but when you look at this pie chart, this is quite interesting. Now keep in mind, YCSJ is 1-out-of-1 blitz format. See how well people can do. But actually, this event was interesting because I heard a lot of talk from people that they were really disappointed in the finals of this, and actually the semifinals, because Mathmech just raffle stomped their opponents. They didn't even let them play the game. And it was actually, from my understanding, that this was one of the most boring YCS Japans to actually watch. So that's actually an incredibly interesting discussion point out here. That, you know, 1-out-of-1 format is a little bit more exciting, but Mathmech made things very, very unfun for the people that were watching the event. So I actually think that puts Mathmech way more into the spotlight in the OCG side of things. So I'm not expecting to see Mathmech, you know, escaping the list anytime soon. So if you're a Mathmech player out here, your time might be up. But in terms of everything that we saw out of the event here, I think that's pretty diverse, considering the fact that the OCG has had one of the craziest spreads out here in terms of metagame up until this stage. I think that that's kind of impressive to say, you know, everything. And honestly, a diverse format like this, the TCG is diverging yet even further, but I think it does leave an interesting place there. Let's pass on over to the top deck list. We do not currently have the first place list out here, but starting in second place out here, we have this Mikanko deck that basically aims to set up and do battle reflection damage to the opponent. You know, I will say that it's actually really cool that Mikanko climbed all the way up to get second place. Now, unfortunately, you know, they didn't get the chance to really play the finals, but I do think that this really says something about the overall state of the format, because if, you know, players aren't really prepared out here, especially in, you know, the gridlock format that this is, you have so many cool extra deck options available to you. You have so many detouring effects that you can pressure your opponent with. I think that, you know, in terms of how this deck plays, I still think this is one of the coolest decks in modern era Yu-Gi-Oh history, just for how simple it is and what it aims to do. Hand traps and then battle phase reflection, an incredibly useful combination of things. But as you can see, incredibly basic here. Next up here, we have Super Heavy Samurai. Now keep in mind the OCG builds out here do have access to Scythe. Crazy, right? The fact that this deck didn't make it further in the event, I think is just horrifying out here, actually. But you do see here Dag to Scythe interactions, some of the most unfair things that you can really bring to the table. And of course, I mean, how many hand traps can you shove in the deck? Also, I like the little metal cruncher here that we have for the deck. So good stuff. Next up here, we have our Purely deck. Now, unfortunately, you know, this deck is playing a very mini Kashtira package. Obviously, Fenrir, Unicorn are incredibly good cards. And I mean, for this deck to finish at, you know, the pace that it did, I think is really interesting in and itself. You do kind of have to keep in mind here the balancing factors of how this format has actually shaped up at this point in time. So Purely, I'm not surprised, was able to kind of, you know, push out a lot of the competition here and do well. Next up here is our Rescue Ace deck. Now, making, what is this, like top cut or top 8 at this stage? I think that this is kind of impressive. They are using Small World to kind of bridge the gap through hand traps and also get to those more immediate value cards that you need for searchers. Do not underestimate, you know, the power of Small World in this deck. You honestly do need this. I also, I always talk about how I like the little choices down here in the extra deck for this deck with the Salaman great, the fact that you do get to play the little Fusion Magician as well. But this whole deck's gameplay in is it's incredibly easy to play. You toggle out the big guy, and then you proceed to just set all the spells and traps for the deck so that you can play the game. It is as simple as that. And it really surprises me that people do kind of struggle out here for how this deck wants to do its thing. So overall, I'm actually incredibly happy to see that this did well. Continuing on with our top cut here, we have, this is what we're going to call Discount Dragon Link, but it is officially Dragon Link at this stage. They were crazy enough to bring the 1 Gamma and the 1 Driver. I actually think that's by far the craziest thing out of this list. Is this deck is able to sit through and do so much craziness for the meta that this monster right here didn't even care about the competition. It sat up, did its thing, called it a day. So good stuff. We also had Sword Soul here. Now, they still have Protoss for whatever reason. I don't know why the OCG has just let Protoss continue to run around in their format, but alas, it is what it is at this point in time. The one card makes all the difference for what this deck can actually do, and I think that's pretty impressive at the end of the day, that one little thing is set up. And then, of course, they do have the little Magic Key Monster Tuner out here. They love that card. It has been one of their tech choices for the whole format. Next up here is our little Rika deck, and I see more and more I stare at these little list, the more that they do love playing the little corn card next to the Predaplant, which is kind of cute actually. This particular build is very hand trapped out of its mind. We have triple unexpected die with your triple little Sunvine sowing. I mean, outside of that, the list feels very, very standard. I will say I like what this deck does, but it can leave a little bit to be desired. Now we're going to push on down into the lower half here. It should be top 16 at this stage. We have another Rescue Ace list. The reason why I chose to showcase this was just to kind of show everybody here that, hey, like, we're still in this. We're still doing our thing here. DD Crows, all the hand traps. Of course, this build opted not to play Small World, which, I mean, can leave a little bit to be desired. I call it what it is, but I think that's very, very interesting to see out here. Next up, we have Runic Stun. Now, Runic Stun in the OCG, this is very interesting because we are main decking Shifter here, and I guarantee you one of you is going to look at this list and be like, why are we playing Shifter? Like, this is so contradictory for what the deck's game plan is. Well, yes and no. Card of Demise in this build is at a maximum full value. And because we're able to kind of maximize and set up, the larger advantage trees with this, you do have to keep in mind that you can get away with some more interesting things. Also, I mean, being able to toggle out your graveyard and not really care. Also, Shifter just buys you a whole turn. Shifter's game plan in this deck is, hey, you want to be able to reset and, be able to set up? Okay, we can get you that. A turn skip is still a turn skip in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, look at all the floodgates. I mean, you got triple Rival, triple Tisubu, double Gozen, and one Tyrant's Tirade here. I mean, it's wrapping up and doing so much for you. Next up is Unchained. Now, this was very interesting to me, because I haven't seen Unchained too much as of late. I think that Unchained is a very interesting, especially, you've got triple Tour Guide with Sangan in here. The fact that, you don't really care all that much about what the opponent does with this deck. I mean, you're just going to go ahead and go pop, pop, pop. You play under Shifter, which is hilarious, by the way. But the fact that you have that Tour Guide synergy in here is just massive free real estate. I mean, also, to be honest with you, the way that this deck plays, I mean, you splash in one Fender, you have an extra level of interruption. You are playing 1-1-1-1 on some of the Unchains, which, once again, is fine. All right, you can cut down some of the fat here and actually find success out here with these. So overall, I'm incredibly happy to see that Unchained did make some pretty major progress out here. And then our last list here is actually a Salamangreat deck, sporting off the mini Salamangreat package, or excuse me, the mini Mathmech package that the deck was actually trying to do. And I think, post-circular, I think that we might actually continue to see this be a thing. Also, the Salamangreat of Fire that everybody said that they didn't like, congratulations, that guy actually played it, alright? The big thing with that card is it acts as a sub-extender, so you can go through and do everything that you wanted to do at that point, and then you're kind of off to the races. So, I like what we're seeing here. Decks were incredibly good. Event was some of the most diverse stuff that we've seen. So please, leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. And I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.